I feel like I do, but I'm my own player. I think about myself in a high regard, of course. So it's not my decision.
It's like he got sabotaged today. That's how it struck me, that they threw him in because they didn't want him to make any more splash and put any more heat on Stefanski. And he's coming off an oblique pull, and I don't know if it affected him today, but it's a desperate, dangerous situation in which he's got no shot, man. He's throwing to Sal freaking Canella? What?
I mean, it wasn't my decision, so, of course that's a quarterback's dream, and that's what every quarterback, thrives for, is those moments. So it wasn't me, but I was happy that Huntley got in and he handled the business. So if anybody else would do it, it'll be him.
Did the Cleveland Browns just sabotage Shedeur Sanders on purpose? That's what fans are asking. And what Skip Bayless flat out accused them of on national TV. Because what happened in Cleveland wasn't just a bad preseason outing, it looked a lot more like a setup. Imagine this. You're an NFL rookie with a legendary last name. You've been hyped for years, praised for your poise, your footwork, your leadership. You finally get your shot to prove yourself, and they throw you onto the field with third-string linemen, zero protection, backup receivers, and no game plan. Then, right as the final drive begins, they pull you off the field. No injury, no warning, no reason. That wasn't just a benching. According to some in the media, that was public execution, dressed up as coaching. And when Skip Bayless unleashed his thoughts, he didn't hold back 1 ounce. He called it sabotage, called it a message, called it dangerous. And now, fans everywhere are asking the same question. Was Shedeur Sanders buried by the Browns before he ever had a chance? And if so, why? Let's break it down.
Overall, as a player, I feel like I put in the work. I feel like everything I do, I try to do it to my best, and that's all I ask for. So I feel like everybody feels like, they should be on the team. And if you ask anybody on the team, would they feel like they belong, in their own eyes. So.
Because once you see what really happened, how the coaching staff moved, how the media flipped, and what's going on behind the scenes, you may walk away thinking one thing. They never wanted him to succeed. It started like any other preseason story, an exciting young quarterback with a famous bloodline finally stepping into the NFL spotlight. Shedeur Sanders, son of Dion Prime Time. Sanders wasn't just another rookie trying to adjust to the pro game. He was the rookie fans were watching. College star. Dual threat phenom. Swagger to match the hype. Every snap was supposed to be one step closer to a breakout moment. But what the Browns gave him that night wasn't an NFL opportunity. It was an ambush. On paper, it looked like a routine game against the Rams. Nothing major. Just preseason. But when Sanders took the field, it was clear something was wrong. The starters? Nowhere in sight. He was surrounded by third-string guys, offensive linemen who couldn't hold the pocket for more than a second, receivers who couldn't separate if they were running routes in the parking lot.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know. I was on the bike. I was powering up. I was powering up for that 2-minute drive because, that's just a situation every quarterback dreams for. That's many situations I've been in before, and I thought I was in. So then he told me I wasn't in, and I was like, okay. I think overall it was great. I think every day is a new day. Every day you learn different things, and there's definitely life lessons, you learn out of every situation. So I'm coming out training camp and everything, happy that I got the opportunity.
From the opening snap, it looked less like a showcase and more like a setup. 5 sacks. That's how bad it was. In just a few drives, Shedeur was hit constantly. Not because he was holding the ball too long, not because he didn't know the system, but because there was literally no time to think. The pocket collapsed almost instantly on every play. No protection, no help, and no adjustments from the coaching staff. Now picture this. You're a rookie quarterback trying to prove yourself to a franchise, the league, even your own locker room, and you're getting crushed every other play. No chance to build rhythm, no time to read defenses, no one open downfield. And then, right before the 2-minute drill, the most critical, high-stakes moment of any close game, you're told to sit down. You're not going back in. That's not just discouraging. That's strategy. The wrong kind of strategy. Because when Shedeur came to Cleveland, fans had real hope. Maybe he could challenge for the QB3 spot. Maybe he could start developing under the radar. What no one expected was to see him gutted on the field with zero support and then pulled from his chance to lead a comeback. And that's when the whispers started turning into fireworks. Was this incompetence or intention? Why throw a rookie into chaos, then pull him once the lights got bright? Why him and not another backup?
The one ball he did come, he was 3 out of 6, but he got sacked 5 times because he's hanging on the ball, trying to make a play, and nobody can separate. Looked like the Rams were playing some second teamers. That Engel kid is just guided missile, and it looked like they had more talent on the field than certainly Cleveland had in the offensive line and in the receiver core that was on the field with Shedeur.
Everything started pointing to something bigger than just growing pains. Fans noticed. Media insiders noticed. And Skip Bayless? He didn't just notice, he exploded. But before we get to what Skip said, let's take a closer look at what really made this situation so suspicious. Because the more you pull back the curtain, the more this feels less like development and more like a trap. What happened next didn't feel like a coincidence. It felt calculated. Because if you break down the details, this wasn't just a tough night for a rookie. It was a strategically designed disaster. The kind of situation that doesn't happen by accident, especially in the NFL, where every move is managed like a corporate chess match. And that's exactly what had fans and Skip Bayless fired up. Because when he watched that game, he didn't see a bad outing. He saw a setup. His exact words, they didn't just throw him in, they threw him to the wolves. Let's go deeper. First, the roster construction. The Browns surrounded Shedeur with third-string linemen, guys who barely had a shot at making the 53-man final cut. The receivers, backup to the backups. New chemistry, new protection, new firepower. Every play call looked bland, vanilla, and safe. No big shots down the field, no creative schemes to get guys open, just the kind of dry, clock-killing, run-heavy setup that makes even Tom Brady look average. So why put Shedeur in that situation?
No, of course it's gonna always be, a little tender, but it's a non-factor for me. I think I had a decent performance. Yeah. I think, it's a lot of areas I can improve in, in different things, but I'm going out there to compete the best I can. I gotta watch the film, honestly. I can't say what it was. It's definitely different places where I could got my eyes in better spots and got to the progressions quicker and regardless of anything, so all those sack steps, they definitely on me.
And he's waiting and he's looking and he's drifting, and I got it, and that's a knock on him in college. But you got to give him something to work with, because in his position as you could say the 5th string quarterback, I don't know, maybe he's the 6th string. I don't know what he is.
Why not prepare him the way other rookie QBs get prepared, with systems tailored to their strengths? Because, according to Skip and others, he wasn't being prepared, he was being eliminated. You don't put a rookie quarterback on the field with that little support unless you're trying to test something more than talent. You're testing how much heat he can take before everything breaks, and perhaps hoping it actually does break. Then came the final nail. The moment that shifted from questionable coaching to full-blown sabotage theory. The 2-minute drill. Shedeur had been sacked 5 times and had every reason to check out mentally, but he didn't. He stayed locked in, kept his composure, even said in postgame that he was powering up physically and mentally preparing to take control of the final drive. The type of high-pressure, game-on-the-line moment that every quarterback lives for. Then suddenly, head coach Kevin Stefanski walks over and delivers a quiet message. You're not going back in. No reason, no injury explanation, no strategy change communicated. Just a sudden, surgical decision to remove him from the equation. And that's the move that lit Skip Bayless on fire. On national TV, he called it what nobody in Brown's leadership would admit: a hit job. A political move to keep the headlines quiet and avoid any internal drama from Shedeur making a late-game splash. Because, God forbid, he actually succeeds. Skip accused the Browns of protecting themselves, not developing talent, and for many fans watching the game, it felt exactly like that. This wasn't coaching. This was containment. And what made it even darker? The silence. No one answered for it. No one owned the decision. Stefanski barely addressed it. The team moved on like it never happened. But fans didn't forget. And neither did the media. Because the big question no one could ignore was this: If your goal was to help Shedeur improve, why put him in the worst possible position from the start? And from here, things only got uglier. Here's the reality: most fans don't see the NFL isn't just about performance. It's about hierarchy, investments, contracts, and reputation. And when you look at the Cleveland Browns quarterback room, it becomes crystal clear. Shedeur Sanders never had a chance. At the top of the depth chart, Deshaun Watson, a $230 million guaranteed franchise quarterback. Controversial? Absolutely. Untouchable? Also yes. Whether he plays well or not, Watson's job is locked in. The money guarantees it. Right behind him, Joe Flacco, the aging Super Bowl MVP, now serving as the veteran presence every team loves to lean on. He's reliable, safe, low maintenance, in other words, a coach's favorite fallback. Then there's Tyler Huntley, the ultimate insurance policy mobile, adaptable, and knows how to run an offense without demanding the spotlight. No big contract, no controversy, just a guy who flies under the radar and keeps the coaches comfortable. Next, Kenny Pickett, plucked from Pittsburgh. Reclamation project, high upside, low risk, and still carrying the weight of being a former honest round pick. Despite his struggles, there's still potential there, and that makes him worth watching. Then comes Dillon Gabriel, a younger, flashier quarterback, the Browns, drafted over 50 picks ahead of Shedeur Sanders. That move sent a message before preseason even started. We've already chosen our guy, and it's not you. So where does Shedeur fit into this mess? He doesn't. On paper, he's QB6 on a depth chart that can barely hold 4. In football terms, he's not just buried, he's invisible. And behind all that depth is the deeper story: NFL politics. The Browns didn't invest in Shedeur. He came in as a late-round pick that many suspect wasn't even wanted by the coaching staff. Rumors suggest it was ownership, specifically Jimmy Haslam, who pushed to sign him. Why? Because of who he is. Not as a player, but as a name. The son of Deion Sanders. A walking headline. A PR dream. The kind of guy who brings buzz, jerseys, and attention to your team just by existing. So instead of being nurtured like a real prospect, Shedeur may have been used. A marketing tool. A shiny distraction from deeper problems in the Browns organization. Think about it. No first-team practice reps. No tailored system to fit his style. No legitimate endorsement from Stefanski or the offensive staff. Just silence and sidelines. And that brings us to the harsh truth. This wasn't just about performance. This was about protecting a pecking order and keeping Shedeur in his place. Because the moment he succeeds, it creates waves, headlines, controversy, questions nobody in Cleveland wants to answer. And the Browns? They're not trying to develop a story that challenges their depth chart. They're trying to control it. But fans are starting to notice, and what they see next will change everything. The moment Shedeur Sanders stepped off that field, something strange started happening, and fast. Sports radio clips, tweet threads, morning after hot takes, all pushing the same story. He's not ready. He held the ball too long. He looked overwhelmed. But here's what nobody talked about in those segments: the situation he was thrown into. 5 sacks behind a third-string offensive line, no separation from receivers, vanilla play calls. Any rookie quarterback in the league would have struggled under those same conditions. But they didn't get dragged for it. Shedeur did. Why? Because when other rookie quarterbacks melt down in preseason, the media gives them air cover. They say stuff like, he needs time to develop. He's learning the playbook. He's surrounded by backups, give him a break. But when it's Shedeur, entirely different tone. He's cocky, overhyped. Maybe he's just not that good. That's not analysis. That's bias. And the fans saw it right away. The comment sections under local Cleveland shows and national highlight clips exploded. Thousands of fans calling it out for what it was: a smear campaign. Because let's be completely honest here, Shedeur's biggest sin wasn't how he played under pressure. It was that he dared to carry himself like a leader with poise, pride, and presence while being made the scapegoat. And some people in the football world can't handle that. They hear the name Sanders. They think flashy, confident, built different. And instead of recognizing maturity under fire, they paint it as entitlement. Meanwhile, other rookies get excuses and Shedeur gets accusations. It goes further. After being benched in the fourth quarter with zero explanation, Shedeur didn't crack. He didn't blame Stefanski, didn't throw anyone under the bus, didn't even hint at frustration. What did he say? I tried to do the best I could. I put in the work, I'll watch the film and grow from it. That one quote showed more maturity than half the league's veterans, and the media still buried him. They ignored the lack of support. They ignored context. And worse, they questioned if he even belonged in the NFL in the first place. After one rough night under impossible circumstances. That's not coverage. That's character assassination. And that's when the discussion started turning fast. Because people across social media weren't just defending Shedeur anymore. They were asking bigger questions. Why was he even signed by Cleveland if they didn't want to use him? Was this about football or publicity? And those questions, they're about to take this story somewhere way deeper. While the media teed off on Shedeur and Twitter turned into a war zone, there was one person who didn't snap, complain, or clap back. Shedeur himself. Post-game press conference. Bright lights in his face. Dozens of microphones shoved in his direction. Reporters fishing for quotes, looking for cracks. Most rookies in this exact situation would have folded, or worse, fired back. But not Shedeur. No excuses. No blame. No bitterness. All he said was this: I just try to do everything the best I can. I put in the work. One sentence, and it said everything. He didn't talk about the 5 sacks. He didn't bring up the backups who couldn't catch a cold. He didn't even mention being pulled in the most important moment of the game. Instead, he owned it. I have to watch the film, see where I can improve, maybe get to my reads quicker, move my eyes faster. Accountability. Leadership. Poise? In a league filled with prima donnas and excuse makers, Shedeur stood completely still, calm, focused, and unshaken. And fans noticed. Even former haters were stopping to say, "Wow, this guy's different." Here's what hit people harder than the game. Shedeur was literally on the sideline pedaling a stationary bike, thinking he was about to go back in for the 2-minute drill. Locked in, zoned in, preparing, not pouting. And the moment Stefanski told him he wasn't going back in, no visible frustration, just a quiet nod and back to the bench. That kind of reaction doesn't come from luck. It comes from a player raised in high-pressure environments built for the spotlight and trained not to crack. And that's why so many people started shifting from skepticism to support. Because this wasn't a meltdown. It was a masterclass in composure. He could have crushed Stefanski in front of the cameras, could have said something slick about the third stringers he played with, could have even pointed fingers at the play calling. But he didn't. And instead of spiraling like the media had hoped, Shedeur did something way more dangerous. He won people over without saying a word. That's real leadership. He didn't need to prove he was a star by throwing for 300 yards. He did it by standing tall while the storm swirled around him. And in the high-stakes world of NFL football, sometimes that's what makes the difference between a backup nobody remembers and a future franchise face. So now the question isn't if Shedeur deserves respect. The real question is, why wasn't Cleveland ready to give it to him? And the answer to that takes us straight back to the Browns' locker room. Because what happened next didn't look like football decisions anymore. It looked like something far more calculated. At first, it looked like bad coaching. But the deeper you look, the clearer it became. This wasn't just strategy, this was sabotage. Let's start with Kevin Stefanski, head coach of the Cleveland Browns, known for his conservative offense, trust in veteran players, and absolute control over the quarterback position. And in case you didn't know, this is a coach who's fighting for his job this season. The leash is short, the pressure is very real, and what he's trying to avoid at all costs? Disruption. Now imagine what would have happened if Shedeur Sanders had gone out in that fourth quarter with third-string receivers and backup blockers and actually delivered. If he'd marched the team down the field and pulled off a comeback drive with nothing but poise and instinct, it would have made headlines in every football outlet across the country. It would have created questions in the locker room, questions in the media, and worst of all, for Stefanski, questions he'd be forced to answer. Things like, why did your 6th-string rookie outshine your backups? Why isn't this kid getting more reps? Is Shedeur making your hand-picked veteran look replaceable? And Stefanski? He's been in the league long enough to know how this works. The easiest way to avoid a quarterback controversy is never letting one start. So what did he do? He pulled the plug before it could spark, pulled Shedeur off the field before that game-winning drive. Didn't even let him try. No injury claim, no tactical justification. Just a quiet decision that was likely made before kickoff ever happened. And that, right there, that's what made Skip Bayless snap. Because it wasn't just bad optics, it was a message. One loud enough to echo through every QB room in the league. You're not in the plan. You're not part of the future. You're here to keep the fans watching, not to compete. And if you needed more proof, look at the play calls when Shedeur was on the field. Safe, predictable, handcuffed. No deep shots. No rollout passes. No effort to play to his mobility, his off-script creativity, or the instincts he built under Dion's system in college. Instead, it was the kind of bland, one-dimensional game plan you feed to a guy you don't want to see succeed. But it gets worse. Because if you're wondering whether that drive being taken away was the low point, it wasn't. What happened next didn't just reveal more about Stefanski's strategy. It showed how dangerous it can be when coaches have power and an agenda. And for Shedeur Sanders, it meant one thing. This was never a football decision. It was football politics in full view. Here's the brutal truth no rookie ever wants to hear. In the NFL, talent is only part of the equation. The rest is numbers, politics, investment, placement. And right now, the math just isn't working in Shedeur Sanders' favor. NFL teams are required to cut their rosters down to 53 players before the season starts. That means some hard choices in every locker room, but no position is harder than quarterback. Most teams carry 2 QBs. A few carry 3. Carrying 6? Practically unheard of. But where is Shedeur right now? Buried behind 5 others, let's break it down. Deshaun Watson, the $230 million man. Locked in. Joe Flacco, the veteran presence. Trusted, familiar. Tyler Huntley, young, mobile, experienced, proven backup. Kenny Pickett, a former first-round investment, still a storyline. Dylan Gabriel, Cleveland's other rookie QB, drafted over 50 slots higher than Shedeur. By the time you get to Sanders' name, one thing becomes obvious. There's no runway left. He's the 6th option in a league where being number 3 still barely gets you on the field, and while fans are screaming about his potential, the front office is coldly looking at logistics. Contracts, cap space, depth, future planning. Even if Shedeur was lights out in that preseason game, the Browns are already committed financially, politically, and publicly to the quarterbacks ahead of him. So what happens now? Best case scenario. He makes the practice squad. But even that comes with a risk. A big one. Because practice squad players aren't protected. Under NFL rules, any team can sign a player off another team's practice squad if they're willing to give him a spot on their 53-man roster, which means Shedeur could be poached, moved, flipped for a better opportunity. Or forgotten altogether. And yeah, fans are holding out hope. They're saying, what if another team sees the tape? What if someone gives him a real chance? But here's where things get dicey. Teams invest where they see value. Cleveland didn't invest in Shedeur. They didn't hype him during camp. They didn't tailor their offense to him. They didn't even draft him early enough to justify grooming him long-term. So that's why Skip Bayless isn't even debating anymore. He's demanding, get him out of Cleveland. Now. Before they waste him. Because if he stays buried behind 5 other quarterbacks, none of this media attention matters. None of the composure, work ethic, or leadership will see daylight. And when you add it all up, the numbers, the benching, the silence from the staff, one thing becomes painfully clear. It was never about ability. It was about business. And in that business, Shedeur Sanders is just a name on the bubble. So if Cleveland isn't going to protect him, develop him, or even give him a fair shot, then the question becomes clear. How does Shedeur Sanders get out? Before they bury his career completely. There's one way. And it's not pretty, but it's possible. Because when teams finish trimming their rosters down to 53, players like Shedeur are the first to get squeezed out. If the Browns cut him, he'll hit the NFL waiver wire, and that's where everything could change. See, when a player gets waived, every team in the league has 24 hours to claim him. Not just for the practice squad, they have to put him on their active roster. And if anyone does that, he's free. Free from Cleveland's politics. Free from Stefanski's silencing. Free from a depth chart designed to hold him down. But here's the catch. It only takes one GM with guts, one offensive coordinator with vision, one head coach who's not afraid to bet on upside over comfort. And make no mistake, teams are watching. Because here's the thing about talent. Even when it's buried, the right people eventually smell it, especially when it's paired with composure, humility, and a chip on your shoulder the size of an end zone. Shedeur has something that can't be coached, and it showed during the worst time possible. He handled media pressure like a 5-year veteran. He absorbed hits without complaining. He got benched with the game on the line, and still showed love for the guy who replaced him. You don't teach that. You either have it or you don't. And in a league where quarterback depth is always one injury away from crisis, a player like Shedeur, high IQ, mobile, poised, media-ready, is exactly the kind of guy teams keep in their back pocket. So why not him? Why should he rot on the Browns' sidelines while other rookies get tailored game plans and long leashes? Because Cleveland wasn't looking for a quarterback. They were looking for a headline, and now that the buzz is fading, they're ready to move on. Good. Let them. Because if or when Shedeur is cut loose, the right team could finally unlock what Cleveland refused to see. And if they do, this story flips. From buried on the depth chart to breakout underdog. From scapegoating Cleveland to starting QB somewhere else. All it takes is one clipboard, one practice rep, one smart head coach who sees through the noise. And if Skip Bayless is right, that moment is coming faster than anyone in Cleveland realizes. What happened to Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland wasn't just a benching. It was a message, a cold, calculated signal sent not just to him, but to every fan watching. Know your place. But here's the thing. They picked the wrong quarterback to silence. Because Shedeur has been underestimated his entire life. He's been told he's only in the spotlight because of his last name. He's been mocked for how he talks, how he carries himself, how confident he is. Too Hollywood, too cocky, overhyped, unproven. But every time someone counted him out, he showed up even stronger. And this Cleveland situation, as ugly and unfair as it's been, may be the moment that defines his career in exactly the way his haters weren't expecting. Here's the truth. You can bench talent. You can manipulate depth charts. You can run a safe, neutered game plan that buries a guy before he ever gets hot. But you can't kill a competitor's mindset. And that's what Shedeur has in spades. He didn't fold when the game fell apart. He didn't blame Stefanski for pulling him. He didn't play the victim. He sat down in front of the media, calm, focused, honest, and said, "I just try to do things to the best of my ability. I put in the work. That's all I can do." And somehow, that one quiet quote hit louder than the entire Browns coaching staff's silence. Because while Cleveland tried to downplay his presence, the whole league was watching, and now the fans are speaking louder than any coach ever could. Free Shedeur. It's not just a Skip Bayless hot take anymore. It's a movement. And here's why. Everyone loves an underdog, but they love it even more when the underdog bites back. If Shedeur lands on the right team, if one coach is smart enough to pull the tape, not just read the headlines, if one GM chooses potential over politics, it's over. Because make no mistake, this isn't where Shedeur's story ends. This is where it starts. He's too composed, too smart, too battle-tested to be just another camp arm. Stefanski never planned to build around him. That much is clear. But someone else might, and when that happens, the Browns won't just look short-sighted. They'll look scared. Because they could have had a future leader, and they let PR politics erase him from their own locker room. Here's what Skip Bayless said, word for word. The only way to save his career is to get him out of Cleveland, period. And honestly, he might be right. So now we turn it to you. Was Shedeur Sanders set up to fail from the start? Or was this just bad timing in a crowded quarterback room? Leave a comment. Let your voice be part of this story. Because one way or another, Shedeur Sanders' next chapter is coming. And when it does, every single person who tried to bury him will have no choice but to watch him rise.